The proximity alarm jerked Dr. Eliza Chen from her focused state. She'd been so engrossed in her xenobacterial cultures that she hadn't noticed the pulsing red emergency lights. Warning: orbital stability compromised. All personnel report to emergency stations. Through the observation dome of Research Station Helios 9, Eliza watched as the Confederation science vessel, Empirical Truth, positioned itself above Xerxes IV. The planet's swirling emerald atmosphere churned beneath them, unexplored and officially classified as extreme hazard by Confederation standards. "They're actually going to try it," she muttered, pressing her palm against the transparent aluminum window. The Medusan station commander, Sotrell, floated into the lab, his translucent tendrils rippling with agitation. "Dr. Chen, you should be at your evacuation point. The Artheans are deploying a probe, aren't they? Against Council recommendation." Sotrell's bioluminescent markings flashed irritation. "The Arthean Science Directorate believes the risk is acceptable. No one's been able to penetrate that atmosphere. The last 3 unmanned ships." Her words died as a brilliant lance of green energy erupted from the planet's surface, striking the Empirical Truth with impossible precision. The Confederation vessel didn't explode so much as unravel, its atomic structure coming apart in ribbons of light. The shockwave hit Helios 9 seconds later. Eliza was thrown against her workstation as emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the station. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. "Full evacuation. All personnel to escape vessels immediately." Sotrell's voice harmonized across multiple frequencies, the Medusan signal of extreme distress. The station's superstructure groaned as its orbit began to decay. Eliza grabbed her personal tablet and backed up her research data as lab equipment crashed around her. The lights flickered, leaving only the eerie glow of emergency lumens. As she staggered toward the exit, her sensor array chimed with an alert she programmed months ago. Unknown signal detected. On any other day, she would have ignored it during an emergency. But something made her hesitate. Computer, identify signal source. Signal origin: Xerxes IV Northern Hemisphere. Signal type: encoded data transmission. Eliza changed course, heading for the sensor lab instead of the evacuation point. The corridors were chaos. Alien researchers from 17 different species rushing toward escape pods, some using appendages or locomotion methods that made the crowded evacuation even more dangerous. A gangly Polyrithian researcher barreled into her, sending her tablet skidding across the floor. "Move, human." Station breaking up. She retrieved her device and continued against the flow of evacuees. The sensor lab was already half destroyed when she arrived, but the primary quantum receiver remained functional. Eliza jacked her tablet into the system. Decode signal and display. The screen filled with scrolling data, complex helical patterns that seemed oddly familiar. Her breath caught as the computer completed its analysis. Signal contains genetic code. Analysis complete. 97% match to human genomic structure. That was impossible. Humanity was the Confederation's newest member species, barely accepted after proving useful for hazardous environment operations. No human had ever set foot on Xerxes IV. Another violent tremor rocked the station. A support beam crashed down meters from where she stood. Final evacuation notice. Remaining escape pods launching in 3 minutes. Eliza downloaded the partial sequence and ran toward the escape bay, her heart pounding in her chest. She arrived just as the second-to-last pod sealed its doors. The final pod stood open, a mixed group of aliens already strapped in, looking at her with compound eyes, sensory ridges, and optical clusters that all somehow managed to convey the same emotion: contempt. The human finally decides to join us. A gray-skinned Taurian hissed as she strapped herself in. The pod launched with a sickening lurch, tumbling away from the dying station. Through the view screen, Eliza watched enormous cracks spread across Helios 9's primary hub, atmosphere venting into space. The comms officer, a 6-armed Vespidian, suddenly straightened, mandibles clicking as it received an encrypted transmission. Directive from Confederation High Command. It announced, compound eyes fixed on Eliza. Crisis protocol activated. Hazardous planet combatants deployed. The other aliens exchanged knowing looks of dread. What does that mean? Eliza asked. The Taurian's skin rippled in what passed for a shudder. It means the Confederation is sending in humans. But I'm already here, Eliza said, confused. Not scientists, the Vespidian clarified, antennae flattening against its carapace. The other kind of human. The kind that thrives where civilized species die. Check, said Captain Myrias, slapping her last card down on a grimy table. The synthetic alien across from her, a commercially produced Pax Corp model designed to look vaguely Taurian, tilted its head. This is not chess, human. And that is not a legal move in Confederation high stack. Maya smiled, the scar along her jawline whitening. It is where I come from. Your homeworld rules do not apply in an official. She grabbed the synthetic's wrist as it reached for the pot of credit chips. With one decisive movement, she slammed its head against the table. The synthetic's facial carapace cracked, revealing circuitry beneath. House rules say I win, Maya said, sweeping the credits into her pocket. The patrons of the rusty airlock, mostly humans with a few alien merchants too desperate or destitute to avoid human establishments, erupted in cheers. The synthetic jerked upright, its vocal synthesizer emitting a staticky protest as security drones descended from ceiling recesses. Maya stood, chair scraping against the metal floor. The drones, hovering black spheres with paralytic dart launchers, surrounded her, red targeting lasers painting her chest. Tourist model caught cheating again, she announced to the room. Same deck configuration as last week. Shouldn't Pax Corp at least update their algorithms occasionally? The drones closed in. Maya's hand drifted to her hip, where a non-regulation pulse pistol was poorly concealed. Before she could draw, her wrist communicator flashed bright red and emitted 3 harsh tones, a sound no one in the bar had heard before, but everyone recognized. The security drones immediately retracted their weapons and backed away, their programming recognizing the crisis protocol alert. Priority override. Top emergency clearance. The bar fell silent. Maya stared at her communicator in disbelief. Well, she said, checking the encrypted details scrolling across her screen. This just got interesting. 12 levels below Outpost Terra's official governance sector, in a maximum security detention block, Damon Jackson was halfway through removing his restraints when the guard's communicators simultaneously activated with the crisis protocol signal. He paused, makeshift lockpick still wedged in the magnetic cuff. The 2 guards, a human and a Vespidian, exchanged glances before the human guard consulted his tablet. Prisoner 8,675,309, he said, staring at Damon through the energy barrier. Looks like today's your lucky day. Damon raised an eyebrow, carefully letting the lockpick slide into his sleeve. Doesn't feel lucky. Feels like Tuesday. Crisis protocol activation. The Vespidian buzzed, mandibles clicking nervously. Your sentence is commuted, effective immediately. In exchange for what? Damon asked, already knowing the answer. Nobody got something for nothing, especially not in Confederation space. The human guard deactivated the cell barrier. In exchange for doing what you do best, surviving where nobody else can. In mining outpost Theta 12, the air itself seemed to burn. A methane pocket had ignited in the lower tunnels, setting off a chain reaction that threatened the entire installation. Pressures building. Sora Nakamura shouted over the comm system. Her environmental suit's external temperature sensors were already maxed out. Vent shaft 7 is compromised. We need to redirect. Her twin brother's voice crackled through the static. Negative. 7 is our only option. The primary vents are already gone. We'll never survive a direct approach, Sora argued, checking the atmospheric composition readings on her wrist display. The methane concentration is Just high enough to ride the combustion wave. Kai interrupted. I've recalibrated the suit shields. We'll use the explosion to boost us through. Sora laughed despite the danger. That's insane. That's exactly why they kicked us out of Confederation Academy. That's exactly why we're the best, Kai countered. On my mark. 3, 2. Their suit comms simultaneously blared with the distinctive crisis protocol signal. Well, Sora said, reading the encrypted message scrolling across her visor, looks like someone finally appreciates our unique approach to problem solving. Kay's voice held a note of genuine surprise. A planet that kills standard Confederation environmental suits on contact. Now this sounds like fun. Dr. Victor Kazan winced as he depressed the auto-injector against his forearm. The experimental compound, a hybridization of human stem cells and adaptive xenobiological material, burned like acid as it entered his bloodstream. Recording Trial 18. He dictated to his lab system. Modified sequence shows promising integration with human cellular structure. Initial rejection symptoms less severe than previous. He doubled over as his body convulsed, sweat beading on his forehead. The pain was extraordinary, but so were the results displayed on his personal medical scanner. His cellular structure was changing, adapting in real time. Hypothesis confirmed, he gasped. Human physiology demonstrates enhanced adaptability when... The crisis protocol signal interrupted his recording, flashing across his lab screens with maximum priority clearance. Kazan read the classified briefing, a slow smile spreading across his face despite the pain still radiating through his body. Well, he whispered, it seems the Confederation finally needs my research after all. Atmospheric entry in 30 seconds, announced the ship's AI in its maddeningly calm voice. The Scorpion. A specialized landing craft with a bulbous command module and articulated landing legs, shuddered as it hit the outer atmosphere of Xerxes IV. Through the forward viewport, the planet's emerald clouds swirled like a living thing, tendrils reaching up as if to grab them. Maya Reyes tightened her harness. Everybody locked down. This is where it gets interesting. Dr. Kazan monitored his atmospheric sensors. Outer layer composition is unlike anything in Confederation records. Density readings are fluctuating. That's impossible, Zoya Chen muttered, fingers dancing across the engineering console. The sister of Dr. Eliza Chen had boarded their ship last, eyes bloodshot and breath carrying the unmistakable tang of synthetic alcohol. Despite her apparent hangover, her hands moved with precision across the controls. Density doesn't just change randomly. Welcome to Xerxes IV, Damon quipped from the navigation chair, where physics comes to die. The Scorpion pierced the outer atmosphere layer, and chaos erupted. Alarms blared as electromagnetic energy cascaded across the ship's hull, overwhelming its shielding. Displays flickered, died, then rebooted with garbled data. Primary systems failing. Zoya shouted. Navigation's gone. Environmental regulations gone. The Confederation tech is frying. Switch to analog. Maya ordered. Kai, Sora, you're up. The Nakamura twins were already moving, pulling protective covers off a separate control system. An ugly, retrofitted array of mechanical gauges and manual controls that looked centuries out of date compared to the sleek Confederation technology. This is why we keep the classics, Sora said, flipping switches on the backup system. Confederation calls it obsolete. Kai added, gripping a manual control yoke that extended from the panel. We call it EMP-proof. A violent tremor ran through the ship as they descended deeper. Through the viewport, the emerald clouds gave way to electric blue plasma-like energy that crawled across the hull in fractal patterns. Temperature rising. Kazan warned. Hull integrity at 87% and dropping. Damon unbuckled, ignoring Maya's shout to stay seated, and moved to a maintenance access panel. We're coming in too hot. Landing thrusters are gone. Another jolt threw him against the bulkhead. The ship began to spin, caught in what felt like a massive whirlpool of energy. Outside, the blue plasma formed shapes, almost like letters in an alien alphabet, before dissolving back into chaos. "I can't stabilize with manual controls," Kai shouted, fighting the yoke as sweat poured down his face. Damon ripped open the access panel, exposing a tangle of coolant lines leading to the ship's reactor. "Captain, we need to vent reactor coolant, controlled bursts to counteract the spin." "That's insane," Zoya protested. "We'll overheat the core." "We're dead anyway if we hit the surface at this velocity," Damon countered. Maya met his eyes for a split second before nodding. "Do it." Damon pulled a utility knife from his boot and slashed precisely at the secondary coolant line. As superheated vapor began to vent, he modulated the flow with a piece of scrap metal, creating rhythmic bursts that gradually slowed their spin. "Core temperature critical," the AI warned emotionlessly. 10 seconds to surface," Sora called out, eyes fixed on an altimeter that operated on sonic principles rather than electronics. The viewport filled with a landscape of crystalline formations, massive transparent structures that caught light and refracted it in impossible rainbows. The ground rushed toward them at terrifying speed. "Brace for impact," Maya shouted. The Scorpion crashed through a crystalline spire, sending shards exploding in all directions. It skidded across a field of smaller formations, each one shattering like glass, but somehow flexible enough to slow their momentum. Finally, the ship ground to a halt, steam hissing from its ruptured coolant system. For several long seconds, nobody moved or spoke. The only sound was the ping of cooling metal and the persistent hum of energy from outside the ship. "Status report," Maya finally said, her voice steady despite the trickle of blood from a cut on her forehead. "We're alive," Damon replied dryly, "which exceeds Confederation expectations by about 200%. Kazan unbuckled, already checking readings on his personal scanner. The only piece of equipment still functioning reliably. "External atmosphere is. This can't be right." "What?" Maya asked. "It's changing composition as I scan it," he said, his scientific detachment momentarily broken by genuine wonder. "Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen percentages shifting every second like it's cycling through possibilities. This is suicide," Six stated, mandibles clicking in what the humans had learned was amusement. The Arthean Lazen stood at the edge of their makeshift camp, compound eyes reflecting the swirling vortex on the horizon. "The Maelstrom has destroyed every probe we've sent into it, even atmospheric drones with diamond-reinforced hulls." Maya studied the perpetual superstorm through her binoculars. The Confederation maps hadn't done it justice. The Maelstrom wasn't just a storm. It was as if reality itself was being torn apart and reassembled. Lightning forked in impossible fractal patterns, striking upward and sideways as often as down. Winds visible as ribbons of colored energy spiraled at velocities that could strip flesh from bone in seconds. And directly in its center, their scanners detected the signal they'd been tracking, the source of the genetic broadcast that had brought them to this hellscape. "We've crossed 60 kilometers of terrain that changes states of matter every few minutes," Maya replied, collapsing her binoculars. "Your briefing said that was impossible too." "There's a difference between unlikely and certain death," Six chittered. "Even humans cannot survive winds exceeding 500 miles per hour." Damon approached, carrying a large crystalline shard he'd harvested from nearby formations. "Then we don't fight the wind," he said, dropping the material at their feet. "We use it." 3 hours later, the team gathered around what looked like primitive gliders constructed from the crystalline material that seemed to grow everywhere. The twin engineers had fashioned harnesses from salvaged parts of their damaged landing craft. "The material has unique properties," Sora explained, running her hand along a translucent wing. "It channels the planet's electromagnetic energy rather than resisting it." "Think of it like surfing," Kai added. "We don't try to power through the storm. We ride its currents." Dr. Kazan examined his scanner readings with growing excitement. "These formations don't just conduct energy. They store and redirect it, almost like neurons in a nervous system. You're saying the planet has a brain? Maya asked skeptically. I'm saying it has patterns consistent with massive-scale neural activity, Kazan corrected. And there's something else. The crystalline structures respond differently to human bioelectrical fields than to any other material we've tested. Zoya, who had been monitoring their communications equipment, looked up sharply. We've been thinking about this all wrong. We're not picking up a signal from inside the storm. The storm is the signal. A tense silence fell over the group as they absorbed this revelation. Even Six seemed momentarily speechless. Everyone gear up, Maya finally ordered. We need to reach the eye of that storm before the Confederation decides we're taking too long and sends in their sterilization fleet. They launched from a crystalline ridge, 5 gliders catching the outer winds of the maelstrom like ancient sailing ships. 6 remained at the camp, declaring that while humans might be expendable, his diplomatic immunity was not. The moment they entered the storm's outer layer, Maya knew something extraordinary was happening. The electrical discharges that should have fried them were instead flowing around their crystalline crafts, creating glowing pathways that seemed to respond to their presence. More incredibly, she could somehow sense the storm's patterns, not just see them, but feel them through her nervous system. Are you seeing this? She called through her communicator. Not just seeing. Kai's voice crackled back. I can feel where the next energy surge will hit before it happens. Our nervous systems, Kazan's excited voice broke in. They're synchronizing with the planet's electromagnetic field. The human electrochemical neural network is somehow compatible with these energy patterns. As they spiraled deeper into the maelstrom, the experience became increasingly psychedelic. Maya's perception expanded beyond normal senses. She could perceive corridors of relative calm within the chaos, pathways that seemed to appear just as she needed them. The storm wasn't random. It had structure, purpose, almost like it's a defense system, she realized aloud. Not random weather. It's designed to keep something out, or keep something in. A massive lightning bolt materialized directly in their path. Before Maya could shout a warning, she felt her body instinctively bank her glider to port. The others followed without communication, as if they'd all sensed the same danger simultaneously. Did everyone else just? Sora began. Know exactly where to fly. Damon finished. Yeah, it's like the storm is talking to us. Deeper they flew, the impossible becoming routine with each passing minute. The storm's fury was terrifying, yet somehow navigable with their newfound sense. The center of the maelstrom grew closer, a zone of eerie calm surrounded by the most violent weather any of them had ever witnessed. The signal grew stronger as they approached the eye of the maelstrom. Their crystalline gliders rode the final circular wind current before depositing them in an area of impossible calm. The abrupt silence after hours of howling winds was almost as disorienting as the structure that rose before them. My God, breathed Dr. Kazan, the scientist's composure cracking at the sight. A massive double helix spiraled from the planet's surface, constructed of the same crystalline material they'd encountered throughout their journey, but with an architectural precision that spoke of intelligent design. The structure twisted upward for at least a kilometer, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow as they watched. No Confederation record mentions this, Maya said, checking her hand scanner. This should have been visible from orbit. The maelstrom, Sora suggested. Perfect camouflage. Damon knelt, examining the perfectly flat crystal surface beneath them. This isn't natural formation. Someone built this. Or something grew it, Kazan corrected, his scanner failing to penetrate the structure's surface. The boundary between technology and biology seems meaningless here. As they approached the base of the helix, sections of crystal illuminated in sequence, creating a pathway leading to what appeared to be an entrance. The team exchanged glances. This was clearly a response to their presence. Trap? Kai asked. Maya drew her sidearm. Only one way to find out. They followed the illuminated path to a triangular opening that dilated wider as they approached. Inside, The crystal walls pulsed with soft blue light that seemed to respond to their movements, brightening along their path and dimming behind them. "It's scanning us," Kazan said, watching his instruments register brief energy spikes, specifically our genetic material. The passage opened into a vast chamber that defied the external dimensions of the structure. Crystal columns rose to dizzying heights, supporting arches of impossible geometry. At the center stood a circular platform with a single crystalline pedestal. "This is it," Zoya said, her engineering sensors detecting enormous energy signatures throughout the chamber. "The source of the broadcast." Maya approached the pedestal cautiously. Its surface was smooth except for a handprint-shaped depression. 5 fingers, palm, unmistakably human in proportion. "Convenient," she remarked dryly. Anyone else find it suspicious that an alien structure on an uncharted planet has a human-shaped interface? Zoya studied the pedestal's construction. "This isn't just a control panel. It's a neural interface of some kind." She hesitated, then added, "Similar to designs my sister Eliza was researching, but centuries more advanced. Someone has to try it," Kazan said. All eyes turned to Zoya, whose technical expertise with alien interfaces was unmatched. She approached the pedestal, flexing her fingers. "If this fries my brain, I expect a proper burial," she said, forcing lightness into her voice. "Not just being left as planet fertilizer." "No one gets left behind," Maya assured her. Zoya placed her hand in the depression. For a moment, nothing happened. Then crystal began to flow like liquid, encasing her hand and forearm. She gasped but didn't pull away as luminous patterns raced up her arm and across her face, tracing her neural pathways. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating to consume the iris. "I see everything." The chamber transformed around them. The crystalline walls became projection surfaces displaying 3-dimensional images of star systems, planets, and what appeared to be a history playing out in accelerated time. The images centered on beings that looked shockingly similar to humans, but with more refined features and eyes that shimmered with the same crystalline quality as the planet. "These are recordings," Kazan whispered, his scientific detachment overwhelmed by wonder. "Historical records of our ancestors," Zoya finished, her voice overlaid with harmonic tones as the interface synchronized with her consciousness. "They called themselves the progenitors." The projections coalesced into the image of a being, nearly human but with subtle differences that placed it firmly beyond human. When it spoke, they all somehow understood despite the language being unlike any on Earth. "If you are witnessing this record, then our final protocol has succeeded. You carry our legacy in your genetic code, children of Earth. We have waited eons for your return." "Step away from the interface, Captain Reyes." Six's voice echoed through the crystalline chamber. The Arthians stood at the entrance, flanked by 6 armored Confederation Special Forces operatives, representatives of various species, each carrying weapons far beyond standard issue. Maya positioned herself between Zoya, still connected to the interface, and the newcomers. "Interesting timing, 6, and interesting company. Confederation Directive 7729 requires immediate quarantine of all xenotechnological discoveries," 6 stated, mandibles clicking in that now familiar rhythm that didn't match his words. A "tell the humans" had learned indicated deception. "Your mission parameters were clear. Locate the signal source and await extraction." "Our mission parameters were to save the Helios 9 station crew," Damon countered, subtly shifting to cover the twins as they edged toward secondary positions. "Funny how they weren't mentioned in your last 3 communications." Kazan stepped forward, scientific curiosity overriding caution. "This repository contains knowledge that could revolutionize our understanding of human origins. The progenitors are a myth," 6 interrupted sharply. "A convenient story primitive species tell themselves to explain their inadequacies." "Seems pretty solid for a myth," Maya gestured to the repository around them. "And pretty specific about human genetic compatibility." 6's compound eyes reflected the chamber's blue light as he moved closer, his escort fanning out with practiced precision. "Captain Rice, surely you didn't believe the Confederation would entrust critical xenotechnology to humans. Your kind has been Confederation members for barely 30 years. You're barely past combustion technology. Yet here we are," Maya replied, standing where 17 advanced species couldn't reach. Something changed in Six's posture, a subtle relaxation that triggered Maya's combat instincts. The Arthean was done pretending. "You were never meant to survive," Six said, his translator producing what could almost be interpreted as a chuckle. "Your mission wasn't a rescue operation. It was a probe." "What are you talking about?" Sora demanded. "Humanity was sent to Xerxes IV to trigger the planet's defense system," Six explained with clinical detachment, "to make it reveal its capabilities so we could identify and neutralize them before a full-scale invasion. The Confederation doesn't waste valuable assets on suicide missions. They send humans." The truth landed like a physical blow. Maya's hand drifted to her sidearm. "And Helios 9, Dr. Chen's team. Accidental discoveries sometimes require containment. You planned this from the beginning," Kazan realized, horror dawning on his face. "The probe that triggered the planetary defense, that wasn't an accident. The Arthean Science Directorate identified signs of progenitor technology centuries ago," Six confirmed. "We've systematically located and neutralized all traces to maintain technological equilibrium in the Confederation." "You mean to maintain Arthean superiority," Maya corrected. Six's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of a dismissive shrug. "The progenitor technology is too dangerous to be shared, especially with a species as aggressive and unpredictable as humans." He gestured to his escorts. "Secure the repository. The human assets are now classified as expendable." The Special Forces operatives raised their weapons. Maya drew her sidearm in a fluid motion, but knew they were outgunned. Behind her, Zoya remained locked in neural communion with the interface, oblivious to the confrontation. A sudden tremor shook the chamber. Dust and crystal fragments rained from the ceiling as a deep vibration resonated through the structure. "What did you do?" Six demanded, his composed demeanor cracking. On the central platform, Zoya's eyes snapped open, now glowing with the same crystalline luminescence as the repository. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic overtones that filled the chamber. "Orbital bombardment detected. Planetary defense protocols initiated." The walls of the repository displayed tactical projections of Confederation warships positioning in orbit, far more than the standard research complement that should have accompanied their mission. The ships had weapons ports open, energy signatures building. "They're going to sterilize the planet," Damon realized, with us still on it. The fragile ceasefire had held for 36 hours. After the planetary defense system's demonstration of power, blinking 3 Confederation warships temporarily out of existence before returning them unharmed but powerless. Even the most militant factions had been forced to negotiate. In the heart of the repository, Dr. Kazan and the Chen sisters worked feverishly to understand the vastness of what they'd discovered. The chamber had reconfigured itself into a laboratory beyond anything humans had ever conceived, with crystalline analysis stations that responded to thought and interfaces that displayed data in 5 dimensions. "It's like trying to teach quantum physics to an amoeba," Eliza Chen muttered, rubbing her temples as another neural interface attempt failed. Despite her scientific brilliance, the repository seemed to respond better to her sister Zoya's less structured approach. "We're missing something fundamental in how we're communicating." Zoya stood before a column of swirling crystalline energy, her hands moving through it as if conducting an orchestra. Data patterns shifted in response, but frustratingly incomplete. "We're thinking too logically," she said suddenly, stepping back from the column. "This isn't just a data storage system or a computer. The whole planet is alive, conscious." Kazan looked up from his station, where he'd been cataloging genetic sequences. "Sentience doesn't necessarily indicate communication protocols we can understand. Even on Earth, we still can't fully communicate with dolphins or octopi." But the progenitors designed this system to interface with human descendants, Eliza countered. There must be a connection method they expected us to understand intuitively. Zoya paced the chamber, fingers drumming against her thigh, a nervous habit from childhood. What if we're overthinking this? What's the most basic form of human connection? A memory surfaced. Zoya at age 6, crying over a fallen ice cream cone. Eliza, 2 years older, making a ridiculous face that transformed tears into laughter in seconds. Emotion, Eliza whispered. Not logic or language or mathematics. Raw human emotion. Kezan's eyebrows rose. You're suggesting we, what? Feel at the planet. Exactly, Zoya said. The progenitors were advanced beyond anything we can comprehend, but they still needed to ensure compatibility with evolved humans who wouldn't have their knowledge base. What's universal across all human development stages? Emotional response. They approached the central interface pedestal. This time, instead of attempting to extract data or analyze patterns, they simply experienced. Eliza recalled the wonder she'd felt seeing Saturn's rings for the first time through a telescope. Kezan remembered the profound grief of losing his mentor to a laboratory accident. Zoya embraced the complex love-hate relationship with her brilliant sister. The chamber exploded with light and color. The crystalline surfaces pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats, then synchronized into a harmonic pattern. A presence seemed to unfold around them, ancient, vast, patient beyond human comprehension, yet somehow recognizable. We did it, Eliza breathed. It's responding to emotional input. Kezan's scientific detachment crumbled as tears formed in his eyes. It's beautiful. I can feel it trying to understand us. The presence continued to explore their consciousness, gentle but thorough. Images formed in the crystal, memories from each of them, but subtly altered as if viewed through an alien perspective. Laughter triggered a cascade of crystalline harmonics. Descriptions of pain caused the chamber to dim protectively. It's not just a repository, Zoya realized, her voice filled with awe. It's an incubator. The progenitors didn't just leave their knowledge, they left themselves. Millions of stored consciousnesses, waiting for compatible neural architectures. Kezan's expression shifted to concern, waiting to override human hosts. The chamber pulsed negative, a sensation rather than a sound. More images formed, 2 distinct patterns intertwining, becoming stronger together while remaining separate. Symbiosis, Eliza interpreted, not replacement or domination. Partnership. A violent tremor suddenly shook the repository, followed by the unmistakable sound of energy weapons. Maya's voice crackled over their communicators. We've got company. Arthean loyalists bypassed the perimeter. Fall back to secondary positions. The massive crystalline meeting chamber had been grown specifically for this purpose. Its transparent walls offered a panoramic view of the transformed landscape of Xerxes IV, now officially renamed Nexus by its awakened consciousness. Where barren crystalline deserts had stretched just days before, organized structures now rose in geometric patterns that somehow felt both alien and familiar. Maya Rice stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by representatives from 11 Confederation species. Noticeably absent were the Artheans and their closest allies, who had withdrawn to their territories following the failed attack and subsequent revelation of their systematic destruction of progenitor sites. The terms are non-negotiable, Maya stated, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. She wore a formal uniform fashioned by the planet itself, crystalline elements woven into fabric that shifted subtly with her emotions. Nexus will share certain technologies with all peaceful Confederation species, but planetary defense systems remain under joint human-Nexus control. A Medusan delegate, tentacles rippling with skepticism, floated forward. Your species has been part of the Confederation for barely 3 decades. You lack the diplomatic experience, Toe. We lack the political entanglements and historical biases that led the Confederation to suppress progenitor technology in the first place, Maya countered smoothly. Humanity doesn't carry your baggage. We see possibilities where you see threats. And that impulsiveness is precisely our concern, rumbled a Taurian representative. Your species' recklessness could destabilize millennia of carefully maintained power balances. A soft crystalline chime echoed through the chamber, Nexus expressing disagreement through its newly established communication protocols. The progenitors created humanity to be adaptable, innovative, and yes, occasionally reckless, Maya said. Those traits you've dismissed as primitive are exactly what's needed to face what's coming. Your qualifications as humanity's ambassador are questionable at best, said a tall, avian peregrine diplomat. Your file indicates you were selected for this mission based on survival capabilities, not diplomatic acumen. 3 weeks ago, you were involved in a physical altercation in a frontier outpost establishment. Maya smiled, the scar along her jawline catching the light. I was chosen because I understand fighting for survival, making impossible choices, and most importantly, knowing when to extend a hand instead of a fist. She looked around the chamber. Like now. From the shadows at the chamber's edge, Damon Jackson stepped forward. His transformation had progressed further, his body now partly crystalline, facets catching and refracting light as he moved. The Confederation representatives instinctively drew back. Perhaps a more concrete demonstration of what's at stake would be helpful, he said, his voice carrying harmonic overtones like those of the planet itself. With a gesture, he transformed the chamber's walls into projection surfaces. Star maps appeared, highlighting 11 specific systems scattered across the galaxy. There are 11 other progenitor worlds, Damon explained. Each contains a piece of the knowledge and technology needed to face the Void Harbinger's return. Each requires human genetic compatibility to activate. The star map zoomed in on a region bordering Arthean territory, where unusual energy signatures were already visible. The Arthean leadership didn't withdraw out of embarrassment. They're establishing a power base. Analysis of their genetic structure reveals markers consistent with Harbinger vanguard species, modified organisms sent ahead to prepare systems for Harbinger arrival. A shocked murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Preposterous, the Taurian snorted. The Artheans are founding members of the Confederation. Your evidence is circumstantial at best. The Harbingers operate on a 50,000-year cycle, Damon continued, unmoved by the objection. They enter a galaxy, consume advanced civilizations, and retreat, leaving just enough survivors to rebuild before returning to harvest again. According to progenitor records, they're due to return within the next century.